You want to know what it was like going to war, Max Lowe? Is that what you're asking me now? It was intense. It was real. It was like snapping into a Slim Jim. It was like that big motherfucking Kool-Aid guy running through your door, and then you're like, Kool-Aid guy, I'm snapping into a Slim Jim, and I'm about to kick your ass. And there's Kool-Aid everywhere, man. In class and everything. And then Randy Savage is like, snapping into a Slim Jim, and I'm like, fuck you, Randy. Bam, bam, bam. Blood and guts are everywhere. The Iraqis are crying and babies are crying, and I'm like, fuck yeah, America! I think that's probably inappropriate.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. So America will change our strategy to help the Iraqis carry out their campaign to put down sectarian violence and bring security to the people of Baghdad. This will require increasing American force levels. So I've committed more than 20,000 additional American troops to Iraq. The vast majority of them, 5 brigades, will be deployed to Baghdad.
Army, I knew what I was doing with my life. And that had been the dream since I was 5 years old. And I'd gone from that, to ROTC and then to active duty. And then I did landmine clearance, which really felt like the Army in a lot of ways. And then I was back in Baghdad. Then I went to graduate school, so I knew who I was. And now I don't know who I am anymore. I wanted to forget. I wanted to be somebody else. I wanted to move on. And so I was just trying to make up for lost time. I was so nervous about becoming a statistic, about becoming a veteran. And to me, I guess that meant, being a drug addict, being an alcoholic, being unemployed, needing the VA. I didn't need help. I didn't want help. I didn't see myself as having an addiction, right? I didn't see myself as having a problem with drugs or alcohol. I didn't see myself as being angry. I saw other people as having a problem with not understanding how to live life to the fullest. But that's when 8-ball and a wall became a thing, right? I would snort the 8-ball of cocaine, and then I would try and run through a wall. And that was a fun party trick for me. I don't think you can necessarily point to a time in that where I was like, well, here's how, here's where you're breaking, here's where you lose it. I wanted to know who I was. Or if I couldn't answer that question, I wanted to cease being. I didn't think about it as committing suicide. I thought about it as just ceasing being. One of the guys I deployed with, he was a contractor, but he was a retired special forces guy. He asked me to put off killing myself for a week or two and come climb with him. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I can wait a couple weeks before re-enlisting or killing myself. I'll go climb with him and see how it goes. So I did, and it changed my life. I feel like I have a responsibility to go back and explore the places and people that maybe I'd heard about or seen glimpses of when I was over in these countries like Iraq the first time. I'd heard about skiing in northern Iraq and Kurdistan. Mount Helgard was the main objective, and as far as I know, nobody has skied up and down it.
So when Stacy called me, it was about a month ago, to see if I wanted to go make a ski movie in Iraq. My first reaction was no, because I'd never in a million years dreamed I'd come back to Iraq.
I invited friends of mine who I think have really powerful stories and who are doing really amazing things in the world. Robin, she owns her own PR business. She's a mother of two who served in 2003, got shot down over Fallujah. Griff fought in Mosul as part of the United States Army Rangers, and I knew that he would be rock solid for this trip.
I'm a pilot, and so I saw this country during my first 2 deployments from about 200 to 300 feet. I almost had no interaction with the people. And then, you know, at the end of our mission, we'd go back to our airfield that was surrounded by a wall.
I think everybody's hesitant. They're on alert when they first fly into a country, specifically when it's all over the news and with Islamic terrorists.
I really didn't understand the history of the country. I didn't understand the people. I didn't know the difference between Sunni or Shia or Kurd. And so everything about the environment scared me.
Kurdistan, America. Kurdistan, America.
Because Stacy Bare is one of the funniest people I have ever met. He's even funny looking because he's a giant of a person. And everything that comes out of his mouth is very funny.
So I went to war. I came home. I did a shit ton of drugs. So did Nathan. I served in Baghdad in 2006 to 2007. I had this idea that if the outdoors was really good for my healing and my health and the other veterans that I served with, that maybe it would be a good idea to come back to all the places that I had been to war or cleaned up after war to climb or ski or mountaineer. Spent a few days in the refugee camps to kind of ground ourselves in some of the understanding and context of what has been happening in Kurdistan recently, as well as far back as the 90s. I mean, some of the refugee camps that we visited have been there since Saddam Hussein tried to bulldoze the Yazidi away. I don't know why anybody ever felt the need to bulldoze this village. It's used to be a village. And then they bulldozed it. And now people live in tents. For what? And these are the people that we're afraid of? Doesn't make sense. Not when you're here, anyway. We're headed to the mountain. We're headed to Korak Mountain Resort. Get about 200 meters of skiing in. And then this evening we'll head to Shoman, and tomorrow head up.
I can't believe we're gonna go skiing in Iraq. That's quite unbelievable. How do you feel about it?
I think this is ridiculous.
So last time I was here was about 12 years ago. I saw most of the country during the hours of darkness, filled with men with black bags over their heads and women and children screaming and crying.
It's a mountain resort.
It's quite unreal.
When I think about the Lowe in Iraq, seeing a man buried in a pile of trash and dogs fighting over his neck to eat, to Shane Mahaffey or Brian Freeman or Dan Holland or Nate Vacco or any number of other deaths, those were all pretty low points. I think that's one of the things I've had to come to grips with over the last 10 years is that I may never know why I went to Iraq. I may never know why I got to live and Brian didn't. But the key thing is that at some point I have to start living again.
This is so cool!
The key thing that people need to remember is that none of us are professional athletes.
Showed up expecting to see a rope tow or a small two-person chair, and there's one magic carpet with about 60 vertical feet to our left. But luckily, I brought skins.
Oh yeah! King of the world! We've been, you can see here, typical lift area. Nobody back home in Utah has this kind of capability or technology. All three of us ate shit coming down satellite left Couloir, which we are gonna rename that Freeman Couloir for my buddy Brian, who was killed in Iraq about 10 years ago, and he would have loved this trip. So, is everybody cool with that? Totally cool with that. So we just skied Freeman Couloir, otherwise known as satellite left. Pretty great stuff. Here's to you, Brian.
Actually made it to Shaman.
How you feeling?
I don't know how I'm feeling right now. We had a pretty epic day on a ski hill, skied a Couloir, named it after Freeman, and then we drove up into these epic Iraqi mountains. They say people do things out of two major emotions. One is love and one is fear. And I think all of us have been exposed to the fear-based lifestyle for the past 15 or 16 years, and how we've gone to foreign countries, we've invaded, we've caused war, we've lost our soldiers, we've had collateral damage, caused massive degradation of the U.S. in foreign policy and abroad. And it's all been based on fear. And we're scared of something happening to us. Versus being able to go out into a foreign country, create a relationship with somebody, have an adventure, do something positive and build connection, and then inspire others to do the same.
My friend Kimberly Hampton was shot down 2 weeks after I was shot down, and she died. And it was probably the darkest moment, because why did Kimberly die and why did I live? Which I still can't answer.
And now we can see Mount Hagen and its full crowning beauty. It'll be interesting to see if we can ski off the north-facing side. I think it'll be a stout climb tomorrow, early.
But the thing is, we have to approach it from that side.
So like the other side.
And that's a long. No. But the village of Sakhan is more to the left. That whole area is landmine. So
This whole
we
area.
can see a road going up, but there's no way we can use it.
It looks like if you could get up that road, right?
Yeah, that would be
pretty gentle, and then that bowl.
Exactly, it would be ideal.
Well, if we could just get over that low ridge right here and then get into that bowl, we could work our way up that way.
Had a pretty exciting day up the old road, pushing the big Toyotas, and then we've been on trail for about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, threading through minefields. You can see all the really good stuff that we've seen that could be skied, like this really fun wind buff stuff that could probably be really fun corn ski. It's landmine, so you know, you won't get your pass pulled, but you could lose a leg.
Before I came on this trip, I had called Kimberly's mom, Ann Hampton, and I said, do you think I should go on this trip? And she said, absolutely. And so she sent me a coin, it was a KIA coin for Kimberly, and asked me to put it on top of Mount Helgard. And had more to do with kind of putting all the bad feelings I had about Iraq behind me.
Are we going to the left of this spot?
It's right back around, like they join 200 yards that way.
Okay.
Because I've carried a lot of, I don't know, baggage with me for 13 years from my first 2 deployments to Iraq, and so I wanted to see if I could put that to rest.
I have to take care of my own healing process. We all have to ultimately take care of our own healing process. And so that's where I wanted to go back. And I wanted to make sure that I rewrote a different ending for myself in Iraq.
That's where we're gonna put on the crampons and bang up. I mean, we're gonna go through the rock band,
Right.
and then we need to see, you know, what the best route is. It looks like it's to the right because it's corniced.
And then we put our skis on our back, put crampons on, had our ice axes, and then we climbed what I felt was pretty extreme climbing that I had never done before. And it was physically hard, but more than anything, it was scary, because every time I turned around and looked down, it was a long way down.
My experience as an Army Ranger was a lot of time on mountain slopes, but I never really spent time in crampons on precarious slopes like that. And the entire way up, I was imagining myself slipping, falling, bouncing down a few hundred feet while, you know, crashing into a few rocks.
I remember looking up and thinking, part of me didn't want to do it. I was just too scared. And I thought, maybe I'll just sit down here while they summit.
I didn't realize how much weight I was still carrying from Iraq. And getting to the top of that summit ridge, I felt a lot of that weight dissipated. The really painful, the really hard, the really scary stuff is mostly done. There's a quote from René Dumas that says, "You cannot stay on the summit forever. You have to come down again. So why bother in the first place? Just this, what is above knows what is below, but what is below does not know what is above. One climbs, one sees. One descends, one sees no longer, but one has seen." There's an art of conducting oneself in the lower regions by the memory of what one saw higher up. When one can no longer see, one can at least still know. I can't unsee my war, but I'll always know what it was like to be at both probably the highest point in my life, literally and physically, here in Iraq, as well as at one of the lowest points in my life here in Iraq. And I think the only two things that are more powerful that I can remember than climbing in Iraq are the birth of my daughter and meeting my wife.
When I was in Afghanistan in 2012, I had the fortunate opportunity to meet the son of the national hero of Afghanistan, Ahmad Shah Massoud. We were sitting in his garden in the Panjshir Valley having a discussion, and so there's this British colonel who'd served in Afghanistan, and he stated Afghans don't like visitors. And here's the son of the national hero of Afghanistan has to stand up and defend his country, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, you're wrong." He says, "We love visitors, we just don't like invaders." And a lot of us as Westerners, as United Nations and NATO troops that are going over these places, I think we fail to realize when you're riding around in armored vehicles, you're building huge walls and you're wearing body armor and guns. I think most Americans, if somebody plopped themselves in our neighborhood and they drove around in armored trucks and they built walls and they started telling us what to do, we would see them as invaders.
So when we see on TV and news a war in Iraq and Mosul, certainly we need to pay attention to that, but we also need to think to ourselves, there's a tremendous amount of beauty that is currently being masked by this war. And more importantly, if we can focus on that beauty, how many wars can we avoid entirely? Because we've also built up these bridges of cultural understanding through, late night dancing in a mountain hut after a long day of chasing POW. Meeting a man who was a Peshmerga for 40 years, says, I've climbed Helgard dozens of times, 100 times. Now I'm too old to do it. So I just go out and look in my binoculars and see the top and remember what it was like to be up there. And now he and I have something more in common. We're not just warriors, we're mountain lovers. We love being outside, and we can share that too. And like he said, that's how we're gonna get to peace. And he's right.